Okay. We're preparing to live stream. I think we're doing it. Oh, goodness. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, I know. Can't wait.
I think we're here. I think we're doing it. I feel like I want to go on Twitter just to see.
I know, just to see. I know my phone's right here, but I'm thinking I'm not going to be distracted. I'm just going to focus on answering questions.
Oh my goodness. We are live on Twitter. This is so exciting. Yo, technology and me is
Right.
everything. Okay. We are live on Twitter. I can see us. I can see. Oh, yeah. And it's switching back and forth. I can see you.
Nice.
This is
Perfect. It's
so
working. You know,
awesome.
you always are relaxed when technology works as you plan. So,
Okay. Huh. All right. We're getting people on. People are coming on. We're live. So hopefully, um, everyone is joining and we are recording. And I do, if you can hear this, we did have a small tech issue. And so we're not currently streaming to YouTube as of right now, but we are recording. Dr. Lisa White has graciously agreed to be recorded. And that was something we weren't planning on doing before. So we are recording right now, and we're going to be uploading this to YouTube. So hopefully we will get the stream situated. But if we don't, this will be available on YouTube for everyone to watch later. Alrighty. So I really came in kind of abrupt, sorry, because I was just so excited about the live stream. So I didn't really introduce this. But good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for, Black and Geoscience Week. And today is Black and Biosphere Day. And it has just been so exciting to see this week. We started out with big diversity, highlighting diversity in geoscience, and then Geosphere Day, and then Atmosphere Day, and now Biosphere. And I think this is really cool because, sometimes when I think of geoscience, it's like rocks and geology. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Geoscientists are all different types of fields and disciplines. And so that's what we're going to highlight today, talking with Dr. Lisa White. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Tiara Moore. I'm a postdoc at the Nature Conservancy, and I have been leading Biosphere Day along with Timmy Kavala. And so we have really worked hard to just bring you some great, Black geoscientists to really highlight their work and highlight everything that we are doing. And so just to kind of orient you to what you're watching, we have a PowerPoint going on just for us to be able to use the closed caption feature. We definitely want to make the presentation accessible. So I kind of did a workaround by having this, this PowerPoint up, and so we can use that captioning. If you don't need captioning, you can have the option to make the speakers larger and just go on speaker view. But of course, if you do need the captioning, we have it here for you. All righty, we're ready. Let's go ahead and get started. So Dr. Lisa White, just first I wanted to start by saying just thank you so much for just taking this time out of your day to chat with us, to chat with me in this candid discussion about your life as a geoscientist. So if you could just start, introduce yourself, tell me your pronouns, and just a quick what you're doing right now.
Sure. Well, I just want to thank you, Dr. Tiara, and all of the organizers of Black and Geoscience Week for just putting on such great programming. So I've really enjoyed the sessions that I've been able to listen to, and to be featured today is really wonderful. So I'm Dr. Lisa White. I'm the Education Director at the Museum of Paleontology at UC Berkeley. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm Zooming from home in San Francisco. And I know you have a number of questions you want to ask, so whatever order you'd like to go is just fine with me.
All right. So let's see. I guess we have to start at the beginning. You know, tell us about your journey. How did you get interested in paleontology? How did you, find yourself in this field?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the high school years. So I grew up here in San Francisco, and when I think of my peers, so my fellow paleontologists and geoscientists, many of them knew by the time they were in high school that they wanted to study paleontology or geoscience. So maybe they loved dinosaurs as kids, or they had like enormous rock and mineral and fossil kits. And I was sort of, a late bloomer. I loved science, but I don't think science liked me that much. I wasn't always really connecting with the subject. And I have two really wonderful older sisters, and they were really outgoing. I was more of the low-key member of the family, and they were really into the arts, and I think as a result, so was I. And I should explain too. So where I grew up in San Francisco, it was very close to Golden Gate Park, and also to the beach, and even to the Haight-Ashbury. So there were so many distractions when I was in high school, because after school we were like, well, should we go to the beach? Should we go to the Haight for maybe some free music concerts? I mean, there was so much going on. And my parents were very civically active. So my father, who really helped define the field of Black psychology, so his field was social psychology and counseling psychology, and he was a professor at San Francisco State, and was a dean of undergraduate studies when the students went on strike. And they went on strike to help establish the first Black Studies program and College of Ethnic Studies. And my mom was a public health nurse. So, activism certainly runs in my genes, but I really was more focused on the arts, and I wanted to be a nature photographer. Like, I loved outdoor photography. And so I aspired to be, the Black female Ansel Adams. And I started, as I was drawn to photography, think, well, if I'm going to photograph nature and landscapes, maybe I should learn something about the landscape. So when I got to San Francisco State as an undergrad, I majored in photography. Oh, see, I knew I shouldn't have sent you that photo, but
You
but
knew it was going to come up as soon as
I
you
know.
sent it to me. I was like, oh, she's trying to stunt for the people.
Right,
So
right.
let me put her out here. This
Yes.
is awesome. Look at
So that was
you.
it. And I used to, develop my own black and white images. And, I'd take photos of my family and, of course, all the outdoor scenes. And as I took a geology class to just learn more about, the landscape and nature, and also, so this was the late 70s and now into the 80s when I was an undergrad, Mount St. Helens erupted in the early 80s. And the first geology instructor I had like ash samples from Mount St. Helens. I mean, he just made the connection to geoscience seem so relevant for us living here on the West Coast, even though that was a couple states north. But I found myself just really connecting with the topic, and it helped that I was able to get an internship at the U.S. Geological Survey in Menlo Park when I was an undergrad. And I had great mentors as a result of that internship. And I got my first taste of field work at that time. So they took a group of us to Alaska one summer. I even helped to do some mapping along some dam site localities in northern New Mexico. And I had no idea. I thought, if science is like this, why wasn't I more interested in my youth? But we know how kind of trapped, science can be when you're studying it in the classroom. And I'm fortunate also to have grown up in San Francisco near the California Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park. So it's a natural history museum where I'm now very fortunate to be a fellow. But reflecting on my youth and just spending time at that museum, and that was one of my first connections with science in an informal setting where I thought, okay, so it's more than just, this sort of cookbook, textbook, doing an experiment in a classroom, and that it involves these cool objects is really, fascinating. But I guess I kind of filed that away, and just became more interested in the arts and was going to try to follow this photography path. And in some of the programs that I've directed over the years for youth that were like me, urban youth who may not have made that natural connection to science, we like to be able to offer, that critical incident, that one experience to just grab them. And so maybe it's a field experience, maybe it's a connection with a scientist at a museum, or in my case, an internship, at a federal agency.
Mhm.
And so through that encouragement, just got the kind of, advice and guidance to go to graduate school. And it was in graduate school that I began to focus more on microfossils. So, but again, that first seed came from that internship experience, which happened over several summers. And so I worked for a geologist, and it was at this survey at that time where I first met some professional women in geoscience. And so connecting with them and getting that kind of mentoring and guidance, I think was really helpful to me in forming a science identity. And the Coast Ranges here in California, they're mostly made up of fine-grained marine sedimentary rocks. So mudstones, chert, rocks that are full of microfossils. And so getting an introduction to the importance of microfossils and studying fine-grained marine rocks was, I think, my first taste of just how valuable paleontology can be.
Wow.
And so during my Santa Cruz years and focusing on the Monterey Formation of California, which is diatom rich, I honed my specialty in that and was also able to go out on some science cruise, multiple science cruises with the International Ocean Discovery Project, and get that kind of experience working both at sea, and on land.
Oh, wow. You
Yeah.
said so much. I had to start taking notes because my
Okay.
memory is not what it used to be. I had to start writing some stuff down. Okay. Wow. This is so awesome because I met you at a conference and
Right.
and we talked a bit, but you don't know everyone's background and everything that you've done to get where you are now. And you really said a lot. So let me look back at my notes.
Okay. And I'm happy, yes, to elaborate on
Yes. I think what really stuck out to me was, I mean, your dad, it's interesting because for me as a first generation Black
Mhm.
student, that's what I always get. It doesn't even matter. I can just say I'm here, I'm like, oh, you're first gen. Oh, you're first gen. It's an assumption.
Mhm.
So I want to ask like a twofold, how was it not, I guess, being first gen? And have you had that assumption made of you, like, oh, you're first, how has that been your experience?
Right. And yeah, and thank you for that question. And because my sisters and I were surrounded by my parents and other academics, my father, who was also a faculty member at Long Beach State University, so also in the California State University system. And it was there that the Educational Opportunity Program was drafted by my father and his colleagues. And so that really opened the door for first generation college students, low income students of color to achieve. So he was always thinking about that next generation, students who might not have access, arguing that the public universities in California should look like the state of California. And, even through all that, my parents never put tremendous pressure on me or my sisters to attend college right out of high school. I guess they just assumed that we would. And I also am fortunate where I didn't feel pressured to study a certain discipline. You see, I wandered, right? So, again,
Look here, wait, here it is. Let me,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna keep
Yo,
popping it up.
I'm like, oh, I should have kept that camera. It would have been a collector's item. So they were cool, and always encouraging if I want to do the art thing, photography thing, no problem. And then when I switched to geology, now I'm sure you hear this too, Tiara, where people like, what are you going to do with that? And here I'm from a family that, is college educated. But I remember my dad asking, well, do you want to be an engineer? I'm like, no, like geology is different from, no. And then he said what I'm sure many, African-American students who are focused in science here, do you want to go to medical school? I'm like, no, I want to study.
Oh, that's the number one. You gotta go to medical school.
Gotta go, we're trying to change that narrative. But that's so typical even now, where we know more about the sciences that are applied or that involve, our well-being or that are practical, that lead to jobs. So yeah, there was battling that. So, being the kind of, having just really a first gen psyche in geoscience could, and did lead to like a fair amount of pressure, like, well, I better not blow this now that I'm committed to this field. And I really had no idea where it would take me. The USGS years were so formative as a student, but I had trouble looking beyond that. I thought, well, I'll just be a lab tech. Like, I'm cool working here,
Yeah.
enjoying these projects. But the constant kind of encouragement, I think, really all students need, that includes sharing just the possibilities. And so with that, I just went straight on to graduate school, to a PhD program, and not knowing then that there were terms for the things that we continue to experience, like, the stereotype thread, and just feeling like you don't belong, and always questioning, am I in the right place, and not realizing the kinds of, judgment and misjudgment, I would experience from others towards me, that, are all intertwined, of course, with the biases that we, know so much more about now. But a lot of times, I honestly just put my head down and went to work, because I knew how much I enjoyed the field. It's like, something about this discipline, sure, it's odd, and I still don't know what I'm going to do with my degree, but I'm enjoying myself, and I'm fascinated by deep time and all of the applications of fossils. And so I try to share that with the students I work with, whether they're college students or pre-college, that when you find a topic you like in science, then, just stick with it, and you never know what sorts of opportunities will come because of that.
Right. So you, bring up a lot, because we know being Black women in this field it's rough. I mean, we go through a lot of these things where we just, put our head down. It's like, because if I cause a scene, I'm going to be seen as aggressive. I'm going to be seen as a complainer. I'm going to be seen as a problem. And so we just choose to really deal with it. But I thought it was interesting that you said in the beginning, you were talking about that you did, when you were coming into the field, you did see women in geoscience. So I'm assuming these were white women, but what types of women did you see, and how was that experience?
Right. Well, it certainly shaped my thinking about who are the members, of this discipline. And so the faculty at San Francisco State in geoscience and geology, they were all very encouraging, I must share. And even though I didn't have any women faculty members, the balance with the female scientists at USGS, I think, was just a great way to kind of round out those early influences. But yes, all of the women geoscientists that I interacted with were white women, but I was also part of a program that was for underrepresented students interested in geoscience. So at least I had a cohort. I definitely had other students, my peers, that we could relate to each other. And even when we were challenged, we had each other. But there are, stories along the way of just trying to fit in, to this science. And even though I felt connected to the science, there were all the questions, even though I had, peers I could share my feelings of inadequacy with, they were feeling the same way too, because it's like we all just got dropped on the moon, or dropped in Alaska, literally, in what was very much, a foreign landscape. And we're still acquiring, the tools and the approaches. And one of my favorite stories to tell from those years while I was an undergraduate intern at the USGS was being on a field party in Alaska. So it was my first time, backpacking, working in high altitudes. We were
Okay.
transported. Yeah, but I was like, "Ooh, okay, I'm getting that for real training now." And the woman who supervised our field party, she was, I think, she epitomized many women geoscientists of that era, where you had to be tough, like you had to be crazy, tough, because of the environment that produces that competitiveness and the survival instincts. And so I didn't understand at the time why she was so hard on me. I'm thinking, well, we're female geoscientists. I didn't get the whole tough love approach. Of course, now I know, all the things that she must have had to put up with in her own training, and, the constant questioning and doubt by, the men who definitely, were the stereotypical leaders in geoscience at the time. But I'm just trying to keep up. I'm in awe of this landscape in Alaska. I'm fascinated by just how field work all comes together. And again, some of the seeds were being sown for interest in paleontology and fine-grained sedimentary rocks. And we're working on these, what we call accretionary complexes in Alaska. So much of the Central Alaska Range was built by these blocks of ocean crust and even seamounts and other fragments of other parts of crust that were all accreted or attached to the land. So in between all those terrains were deep marine rocks, muds that needed studying. So yeah, it's definitely connecting with the science. But Dr. Moore, they didn't, in those days, they didn't exactly tell you like what to bring in the field besides, your backpack, the tent, and, clothes to stay warm, tent, good boots, all that. So I'm thinking, oh, well, we're going to be out here for, 2-3 weeks. We're going to need some music, right? And this was like way before we had music in our phone, no, of course, cell phones in, nothing portable. So I'm just, again, still loving the arts and music. So I had one whole backpack, like filled with an old school tape cassette player and like a dozen cassette tapes, So I figured we're going to be at the campsite, right? So we're going to need some music. And I don't know. Again, stupid stuff, but
But
don't
it's
know.
so true. You're right. You're right.
So I'm like, oh, this backpack was supposed to hold the rocks. Like, I'm just like, how am I going to fit? I can't even be, a good field assistant because I have like music in this backpack. Of course, I was found out, I was trying to just hide it on the sneak, but, midway through this day where we have a long trek and all our packs are heavy and I'm not keeping up. So all my cassette tapes and this tape recorder, it wasn't quite a ghetto blaster, but it was enough, like all spilled out of my backpack. I was like, oh, so then of course I got towed off. I'm like, I'm already feeling awkward in this environment. And now I really don't fit in. So there were some moments that summer I thought, maybe I'm out of here. Maybe I clearly don't fit the stereotype. The way they're perceiving my behavior is very unfit for this. I upset the cultural norm, even though no one explains what the culture is. It becomes clear. Whew. But anyway, I survived all that. And I was like, but it makes you stronger. And I usually just default to something good about the experience. And there was enough that was good that I thought, well, this will make a good story. So later on, when I'm doing field work with, students or youth, I have to remember this, that everybody needs, I think some acclimation to field work.
Right. And I think you made a good point, and I had wrote this down, but transitioning into thinking about you as, a scientist now, a paleontologist now, a doctor now, a mentor now, how do you think your experiences shaped how you mentor students?
Yeah, they really do shape it in fundamental ways. The years before I came to Berkeley, so I've been the education director at the Museum of Paleontology for 8 years. And before that, I had a 22-year career at San Francisco State University. So I came back to my alma mater
Okay,
as
okay.
faculty. So they hired me right out of graduate school when I finished at UC Santa Cruz. So my position there, it was very teaching focused, even though I was still doing research with the International Ocean Discovery Program. I had my Monterey Formation projects, and it was quite a lot, teaching geology, paleontology, oceanography, but I was always really drawn to community partnerships and educational collaborations because, I was still in my hometown. So with faculty members at San Francisco State in geosciences during those years, we received funding for a program we called SF Rocks. So reaching out to communities and kids with science in San Francisco. So we would recruit high school students from high schools in the city to work with us on research projects. Later on, the program expanded with additional funding. So we partnered with UT El Paso and University of New Orleans and Purdue University to bring students from all of our regional areas on field trips. And so here I was now in the lead on a field trip with students who don't have that many outdoor experiences, but we wanted them to have the kind of enjoyment that many of us have in our science. And so, clearly in the years where we could, safely do field work, we just took full advantage of being able to take literal caravans. We'd be 15 cars deep sometimes with
Okay.
students and all the mentors. And so funny story from that too, but which helps answer the question of what sort of, mentor am I, and what do I keep in mind from my early experiences in my geoscience training that I want to pass on to youth. So one of the years we're meeting the groups from New Orleans and from El Paso and Purdue in Utah that year. So we're driving from California and, we're making stops, that's how we do it in
Right.
science field trips. We make various stops and make sure that we're learning along the way. And of course, before the field trip, we spent a lot of time, we talked to parents about where we're going. We had a guidebook. We did some early training, in rock and mineral ID, introduction to fossils, deep time, you name it. So one of our first stops was this place in Idaho that's got these beautiful canyons, that are cut into these dark basaltic rocks. And it's very dramatic, the landscape there. So we get out, and of course I'm excited, all the instructors are excited. And one student, like the first thing he says to me is this real? And I'm like, what? I didn't understand the question at first, because no one had ever asked me that. And then I got kind of angry because I thought, now we've been talking about this, for I don't know how long. And these programs cost money. And you're going to ask me, right, did somebody make this up? Or like, it's not like the fake rocks at Disneyland. But anyway, when, I cooled down, and when we got through his question and I finally listened, I realized, there's not that much that prepares someone for just the natural beauty of or that kind of scenery, that scale of of landscape if you don't have that kind of training. And so not everything we see as scientists, whether we're a bench scientist or a field scientist, or we do our research on ships, you can't assume that someone will see science the way you do. And that's what training is all about. And so I still believe in that just fundamental need to guide students and assist them in finding their way in the science, whatever branch of geoscience or paleontology they like, having that direct experience, and then not judging, just don't judge, let there be freedom to ask, a question about what they might be seeing, because not everyone has an opportunity to go to these places in Utah or stop at this canyon or go to Yellowstone. And so that's why we need those programs. And even though we've switched a lot of those now to virtual, one of my projects at the Museum of Paleontology focuses on virtual field experiences and working with colleagues, faculty at other universities who have a lot of expertise and the kind of remote delivery of field experiences is a really great teaching and learning opportunity for us. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So there was a lot. I think what I got a lot of what you were talking about is like the assumptions, that people can have when you're used to like, going on family trips and camping trips and you see all this stuff all the time. I can definitely remember my first time like, seeing like just being outside as a scientist or as a student who was learning and truly had a background of like, oh, this is a structure, right? And this means something and this is what it is. And it's like, oh snap, like this is so cool. And so for people to like scoff at that, like, ugh, what like like dang, I was having a moment. Like,
and you never look at the landscape the same, right?
right.
And around you, you want them to see, what you notice too. And see, once you get bitten by that bug, and I just want people to get just bitten by that science bug, and you just look at the world differently, and you
Right.
feel just really inspired, to just go to work and share it with others.
So something else, maybe we're gonna go a loop around to ask a question. So you mentioned being in like a diversity cohort.
Right.
And I was also in some like, I guess like kind of cohort type program where, they kind of like, yeah, you just say like, plop, here you go, like, we'll pay for you to come,
Right.
we'll give you a little stipend. But then
Right.
that's really it. And I think there is an assumption that that's enough. And it's like, it's kind of hard. I feel like my nerves getting up as I'm talking about this because I don't want to ever seem ungrateful or all this. But the experience wasn't the best, to be honest. Like, I was plopped in and left for dead, to be honest. So it's like, why is there assumption that that's enough? Like to get the Black students there and then there's nothing else that happens. So what was your experience, I guess, with the diversity cohort you were in, and how do you feel about that whole thing?
Okay, well, cohorting is key. And I think many of the early diversity programs just assumed, as you said, we're going to plop you over here, but it'll be an exciting environment and you'll be supported by stipend. You'll learn so much, it'll be good for your career. And they often, those early programs didn't take into account the whole student, the mentoring, the kind of isolation that can be typical at a science facility. And that's real. I mean, I'm sure we can both share examples of student who just got out, after that, even though it seemed like everything was set up for them to be successful. But if you don't acknowledge that there can be feelings of isolation, that people need other things besides the science to keep them successful. And so I suppose one way, I was able to overcome that. Well, it was helpful that those of us in the program during those summers did come in together. And so we were from different, Bay Area universities and 2-year colleges. And so even though we all kind of got thrown in together, at least we had each other. And then, what happens, we'd have our side meetings or just have, again, we didn't even know what to call these sessions, but we just make them ourselves. That, if we needed to talk with each other or if we just needed a little bit of support. And so when I've designed and, carried out various programs for students, we've just tried to consider all of that, making sure that they have opportunities to work in groups, that they don't feel isolated, that they'll need, mentoring, advising, and some guidance. And I'm noticing now too, I was recently asked to review and contribute to a manual that the REU programs, the Research Experience for Undergrad programs, could use. And so they're making sure, there's a section on inclusive principles and diversity and equality, and that has to be as important a part of the science training as all the technical skills. And so we're getting there, I think, finally, but look what it's taken to acknowledge that. But I've worried a long time over the years about just losing students, and I see it in graduate school too. I mean, Berkeley's a crazy environment, and you can't expect that, you know, all the students, of course, are going to come from exactly the same background and training, but they're there. And so they should be led to believe that they have equal opportunity to achieve. But just, you know, the socialization of graduate school, the competitiveness, the, you know, faculty pressures that lead them to focus more on, you know, the technical training of their students and not so much the whole student is, you know, is still a barrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it is interesting because we're also in spaces that are, you know, we're not just the only person in the department as far as, you know, if we're on faculty. So imagine, you know, you have a diversity program, you bring in a, you know, a couple of Black students, but then if
Yeah,
the rest of the department isn't doing anything, then,
right.
you know, what, you know, and I think that's what was my experience. I feel like we had a few people who had brought, oh, we need Black people. But then the whole rest of the department was still not diverse. So it was like,
Yep.
but you know, so it was that isolating experience that you talk about, where it's like we're feeling like we're bought in as the diversity initiative. People make comments. You know, I remember someone making a comment in our department saying that they felt the quality of their degree went down once our we came in. And you know, that was just like so disappointing to hear, first off, from someone who's supposed to be my peer, someone I'm supposed to be looking up to because they're an older student than I am. And
Yep.
but that's what they're saying about us because we're seen as this group. Oh, they found a bucket of money. Now they're going to bring in these Black people. So
Right.
it's disappointing. And
I
so
know.
now, yeah. And so it's like now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, totally agreeing with everything you have to say. And somewhere in those conversations about diversifying the student pool or even the faculty, or now in the work I do with the professional societies, AGU and GSA, we want to ensure that the honors and fellows, the awards, go to diversity of people, you know, in our societies. But somewhere in there, someone always inserts, well, we have to change the criteria then, you know, we have to reshape what, you know, we're defining as excellent or as worthy of this award. It's like, no, you know, our many times our scholarship or what we bring, you know, as scientists, as, you know, experienced educators should count, you know, as highly as, you know, whatever they're measuring other folks by. But we have still work to do when it comes to that, because there's still this perception that, yep, if you're recruiting members of diverse communities to your programs, that there's some separate criteria for them, or that they bring, yep, the program in directions that are lesser than, and, you know, those old arguments.
Which is just like such,
Mhm.
it's just like, really, you know, because it's like there are so many different stereotypes for like brown and Black people, but like the good ones never follow up, because you know, it's like, oh, they're hard workers, but when it comes to like being minorities in the scholarship, that was just given to us. Hold up, like how did that happen? Like how did that narrative just change really quick? So I think now though, and I want to talk to you about this, is are you seeing a shift, I guess, in some of those same people
Mhm.
now hitting you up, now really, you know, now trying to be like, hi, I'm
I
now live.
Well, you could answer this too, I'm sure, but so many Black professionals in STEM, we've been saying since May, since the George Floyd murder and all of the social upheaval, you know, our phones are blowing up, our inboxes are full with requests
Honey.
that would not have been there a year ago. And so on the one hand, I'm thinking good, because I've been at this for a while now. You know, I've been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion my whole career. I mean, even as a graduate student, I mean, I have to do it on the sneak, but I was always looking to help out at a science fair, you know, partner with other students in STEM disciplines when I was at Santa Cruz to, you know, build community and to do things that extended off the campus, you know. That's just what we do, you know, we give back. And I just made certain that I made it a priority during my faculty years, and being at San Francisco State, where service is valued, as much as teaching is and research, I did feel the freedom to do that sort of work, the broader impacts work, and that I would get credit for it, for tenure and promotion. But I know that's not how it is for everyone. I'm still parts of lots of discussions with, early career scientists about how much they should be spending on the things, that we traditionally call service. But you can't expect that anything's going to change, unless there's some equal respect for, diverse members of our science community, and that, you hear us out and realize all there is to learn. I know, one of the questions you had on the list was about just allyship, and what we should be expecting now from members of our community that aren't from traditionally underrepresented groups. And I've been, fortunate to be part of a growing number of geoscientists of color that are trying to move beyond the petitions and statements that came out, right after the George Floyd murder. And I think those were important. I mean, universities were standing in solidarity, our professional societies, letting it be known that we need to work harder as a community to be anti-racist and blah, 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 blah. But, the rubber hitting the road, what does that really mean in our disciplines where they're just so rooted in all this tradition and the expectation that, you're only going to study certain things, or that you have to go about it a certain way, or that we only hire people from this university. And they just sometimes just weren't even listening, to, I think, the valuable contributions we can make about extending, collaborations, so that we are having, kinds of partnerships with communities that also benefit from good science, or that can, make observations and contribute to the science. So while I'm inspired, and, look at this whole week we're having, and folks are retweeting, they're tuning in. I mean, they're definitely listening and looking to all of us for advice, but they have to be willing to take the advice and, help us just dismantle some of these power structures and rethink how it is we educate people, and what do we expect professionally, as we claim we want to, diversify the geosciences.
Exactly. And so I guess following up with that, which was so eloquently said, thank you. How does it feel, I guess, as like an OG, original original person who has been in the streets, like, really talking and like yelling into this, storm of people just not listening, and to see, movements like, Black in STEM, Black in STEM, Black AF in STEM, all of the Black, all of them, all the way to now we're in Black in geoscience. Like we went from STEM to geoscience, like what, and we're even smaller. So how does that feel? Like, how do you feel about these movements, knowing that you have been in these streets,
Right. Well, it feels great. And even my family this week, as I was sharing with them what was going on, they still couldn't believe. You're not the only one anymore. Like there's a whole new generation. I'm like, yes.
Oh.
And so I love that other people are recognizing that, sure, our numbers are small, compared to the life sciences or other branches of science, but we're vocal, and with people just paying more attention, to all the global conditions. I mean, Tiara, it is dark outside, the smoke from the fire, it could be 10:30 at night and not 10:30 a.m. And so you just have to notice now, what extreme conditions that we live in, how much the natural world is changing, and folks are just way more in tune with what geoscience is all about, and why we study the earth, why it's so important. And there's just some truth to things paying off after a while, even when it wasn't popular to work on diversity programs, or even coming to Berkeley and wanting to prioritize diversity programs in a museum setting. I mean, I always felt supported, but there's a certain amount of pressure. It is Berkeley, after all, to bring in an array of grants, and they don't necessarily, you know, have to all be about diversity, but and one of my main roles is to promote the many rich, you know, online learning modules that we have connected to our websites. In addition to supporting graduate students at our museum on their training, many of whom I think really value opportunities to dive into broader impacts. But now, you know, with everything that's happened this spring, there's been so much additional support from the museum that I truly value. You know, we have a working group now on diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism.
Okay.
We've really rethought some of the ways in which we share information on our websites, and we want to be more inclusive in that. When we're able to return, you know, to field and in-person instruction, I've got some exciting partnerships with the International Ocean Discovery Program to get students out to sea, and then also really re-examining field work. You know, you notice that as I shared my own journey, field work in my training is, you know, something I love to share, and that we're rethinking field work. I mean, separate from the pandemic, I think we were long overdue to really think about those sort of classic expectations in geoscience training that are held over, you know, from another generation that might not be relevant today. I mean, we know students that do their whole dissertation, you know, modeling, never go in the field or just work with big data,
Right.
and that's as valuable as going out in the field. And I mean, we've got 5 million fossils in our collection at the Museum of Paleontology at UC Berkeley. Do we really need to go in the field, you know, for more thought? Sometimes the field is examining collections at museums, and we've got wonderful tools now to digitize and image them in 3 dimensions and share information and databases that I think, you know, we never had access to before on that big scale. And so I think between the new tools we can use
Mhm.
and the need to just keep informing others how relevant, you know, our discipline is, just keeps me inspired on what we can achieve. So yeah, whatever sacrifices I had to make all the years I worked on this, even without, you know, big grants, was still totally worth it. And so, yep, if I can inspire all of you and this next generation of the importance of this work, then let's just all do this, you know, together. Mhm.
Thank you. Because we definitely need, I feel like without the voices of the past, like we wouldn't be here because you had already been talking and they saw you. It's like, oh yeah, there is this. Oh, there is, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that just left space for us to be where we are today. And I think there is the movement, you know, with Black Lives Matter that is causing white people to listen a lot
Yep.
more. But I'm glad that because we were already experiencing these things and we were already vocal, that we were able to jump right on it, you know, because nobody can say I wasn't already talking about diversity in STEM, talking about the things that I was going through. So once tapped on my shoulder, here
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Hello, you know. So I'm grateful that we as Black people were actively and prepared because of you, to be honest.
Oh, well, when I met you at ASLO, you know, I remember being so impressed with all of your levels of activity with the student chapters in ASLO, and then, you know,
Thank
even your own history, how you got involved in, you know, marine science and ecology. And I was as fascinated because I kept thinking, wow, well, if I had known like what you knew when you were, I don't know, maybe I would have had a Nobel Prize now or something. I don't
right. Oh, yeah, wait, now that means I got to go get a Nobel.
know.
I'm working on it. To the Nobel Prize people, if you're listening,
I
okay. But we've talked a lot about like different field experiences. You know, we have our Black in the Mud panel later today that's going to really be highlighting field
Yeah,
experiences.
right.
But then you just made a point of maybe you don't have to go into the field, you know, at all. Like you can be, you know, where how we is now, how we are now, like in your house behind your computer.
Right.
So how do we let the people know this, like get the, you know, the next generation excited about being a geoscientist and having all these options. And just you alone, you've talked about, you know, cruise experience,
Yeah.
museum experience, camping experience, hiking experience, all these different things. Yeah. So what do you have to say, I guess, for the little ones?
The little ones. Yeah, well, I'm definitely trying to keep it going, and I'm participating in a whole range of, virtual opportunities to talk with students and share the science. I'm fortunate to work with some great graduate students at UCMP, and so they've converted a whole series of labs that we had. We've been partnering with community colleges in the Bay Area, recognizing that those kinds of connections are important if we want to build diversity in geoscience and in the paleontological sciences. And so we've been working with community college instructors so that their classes could spend a lab period at the museum, and graduate students would lead a lab that was fossil focused. And so now we've converted all of those labs to the virtual. And even when we are able to meet back again in person and able to bring students out in the field, I think there's a definite part of, teaching and learning online that's going to be here to stay. And if that allows us to reach groups, beyond where we live and, connect in a way that maybe we wouldn't have put as much time and energy into, then that's great. And so I'm trying to just keep, a few different kinds of balls in the air and projects that do take advantage of opportunities, to teach and learn in person when we're able to, and then the virtual, and then also, with support from some of the different NSF programs and initiatives, there continues to be a fair amount of attention on working with leadership. So, we're still depending on the faculty and professionals, scientists of color, to do a lot of the leading, in diversity. Look how busy we all are now, and
Right.
and we're expert. We have our own personal journeys, and many of us, we're directing or are directing programs, but the responsibility should lie with all of us. And so I'm really looking forward to opportunities to work with other PIs and faculty who want to be, initiators of change, who want to be change agents, but that maybe they don't really know how, or their department is still stuck and so homogenous that how do you even get started? And so we're trying to just build these communities and opportunities to learn through workshops on just strategies, to start to build more diverse practices and programs.
Oh, that's really awesome. So
Yeah.
you actually mentioned a lot of different programs that you're involved with, or initiatives that you're doing. So let the people know how they can get involved
Great.
with the things that you have working on, or if you want help, this is the moment.
Yes. In fact, there'll be opportunities for graduate students with a few colleagues who I've worked with on this field project. So field is an acronym. So field work, inspiring expanded leadership and diversity. And so if you go to the UCMP homepage, so it's just ucmp.berkeley.edu, or if you Google, UC Museum of Paleontology. So on our homepage, we have a section of the page that's about diversity inclusion. And so you'll see a lot of my programs there. But one of the things I wanted to share is that with these programs, and so I've tried to really keep it reflective of, all of my subdisciplines, so even though I specialize in microfossils, my broad training in paleontology, includes really lots of different kinds of invertebrates. So one of the projects we have is about virtual field experiences to invertebrate paleontology sites here on the West Coast.
Wow.
Part of my training is Ocean Science Connected. So I've got these great partnerships with IODP and with colleagues that direct the STEMCES program. So that's for undergraduates to go out on research vessels. And then I like to think that, much of my training was also in the solid earth geosciences. And so thinking about transitioning those traditional field expectations and degree programs to expectations now that reflect the modern era. So being able to engage in field work remotely, incorporating data and visualization into field training and working with instructors to do that. And so as we've tried to really think about including more diversity in field connected sciences, we'll have opportunities to work with graduate students to be these field fellows, as we call them. And so they can also receive this kind of training and think about, what it really means to incorporate, a field-based science or field-based data collection. So yeah, I'll continue to share that out I know that, hashtag Black and Geoscience Week will continue to be active, right? And so I can share Twitter when I'm recruiting for programs.
Please do. We will definitely retweet your stuff. Tag us in it. And I just want to take a moment. I almost got teary-eyed. I am so proud of you. Can I just say that? Like, oh my goodness, like this is just so amazing to hear about these things that you are doing. And like, as a Black woman, this is just so awesome. I know, like, for me, like, again, like getting here and being in these rooms where it's just me and feeling like, oh my gosh, should I be doing this? Could I go do anything else? Because I feel like I could, do by anything else in Excel because as a Black woman. So to get here and to still be in a room, by myself, but with you, and to hear about the things that you're doing that I didn't even know about, just to keep our field thriving with diversity is like, my heart is full. Like, I thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And well, it's a lot of work, but I certainly have help in this effort. And honestly, though, there are times when I still get some, feelings of stereotype threat. I'm like, no, I am too old. I've been in this, but you find yourself in a room and, with each new challenge or a different environment, I'm like, wow, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I really am the only Black person in this room, or, the only woman of color. Or it's like, oh man, you just get shaken up. It's like, okay, you just get reminded. We still have a lot of work to do. I mean, I have all my comfort zones and programs that, I've been fortunate to receive funding to expand that are the feel-good programs and reflect the things I love to do, which is, study fossils or go in the field, or being able to partner with the whole range of museums and other universities to excite students about science. But then every once in a while, you get in a different or new environment. It's like you're starting from square one, So,
Right.
So there's still that, but that's why, just try to, keep it moving, as we say, and just stay connected. I mean, I'm sociable, I love working with people and meeting new folks, and working with the next generation, because everybody's so full of ideas, and think of what we've been able to accomplish, just this spring with everything going on, with all the negative just conversations about, diversity and inclusion that are flippant. I'm like, we're going to lose this at any moment. People are, are down with the mission now, but we know what a lot of
burnout. Yeah, burnout is real. We know.
Yeah. Oh,
we
yeah.
Know, we know
that, and we can't
get tired.
Yeah. So there has to be room for folks to step back, and we can't do it all at once. Whatever conversations we keep going, I think it's helpful if we remind each other that we're in this for the long haul, right? Where there's no going back now. So we just have to, keep pressuring and making sure that it remains a priority, to just diversify. Enough already. We know what some tools and actions work, and there clearly are resources that help these initiatives. So let's just try to be more strategic,
And I think you really summed it up. Enough already. Like, y'all know what it is. Y'all know what's up. Enough already. Like, enough already.
Yes. Right. So let's get to work. That's the hard part, I know. But if we've learned anything from all this, it's like we've just got to be, more strategic and focused on some maybe short term and then middle and longer term goals. But we're just not going back anymore. It's just we can't keep, pressing opportunity. We can't ignore the benefits of having more diversity in our discipline, again, especially now, given all the environmental pressures.
Right.
People are sick, we're unhealthy, we're not getting, the kinds of, I think, basic information that science can offer about, how best to live your life and get that opportunity. So yeah, if we can even extend, geoscience to health and wellness and just, creating a better life for our communities, then I, would be very happier in that.
So we are at time. I want to ask you a last question. So while you think about it, I'm going to wrap up. So what do you think retired Lisa is going to be the most proud of? What do you think the retired Lisa is going to be? What is she going to say? So while you're thinking about that, thank you everybody. I'm assuming people are watching because we're live. We might have just been talking to ourselves for the last hour, but it doesn't matter because my heart is full.
Okay.
We have up next, we will be taking over the 500 Women Scientists account, and that's going to be at 3 p.m. EDT. So head over to the Instagram, 500 Women Scientists, and we'll have some more geoscientists talking to you there. All righty, Dr. Lisa White.
Okay.
What is retired Dr. Lisa White?
Oh my God. Well, I certainly hope, when I'm retired that we would have, sown more and just deeper seeds of activism in the next generation of geoscientists. And I'm seeing that already. I mean, as I said, when I was a grad student, we had to do some of these education projects and diversity projects on the sneak. But many graduate students now and postdocs are just out front with it and see it as really essential to their own professional development and training. And so if that's just some of the legacy that folks like me, who've been working on these programs for decades leave, then that's really wonderful. And I often, you get people say, oh, don't work so hard. Why are you doing all these programs? It's like, I don't know. I try not to work all the time, but when you like your work and plus we get benefits, right? When we're able to travel and go to places and, go to these great international conferences, there's something that's very rewarding about our work. But yeah, I just hope just that spirit of activism in science is here to stay. We can't leave the activism to the social scientists. We very much need to be in the lead. As physical and natural scientists. Well, thank you for this.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. So well put. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. That you had different interests and that you made your way over here from photography, geoscience, and I can have this conversation with you today and work with you in the future. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you all so much. Please enjoy the rest of Black in Biosphere and Black in Geoscience Week.
And I'll see you online.
All righty.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. It was a great day.
Bye. All right, Willie. Bye.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you.